Hey guys, welcome back to my deck collection. This is video 2 or part 2, what have you. Just a quick reminder that this is strictly for my tarot decks. I will have 2 other videos coming out that will be for my oracle. So let's just dive right in because I really kind of want to make these quick so they don't drag on too long. The first is the Art History for Past Lives. This is a really interesting deck, and it's actually one that was drawn to my attention by a friend of mine, and then it was gifted to me by another friend. And I've only experimented with it just a little bit, but it is specifically for past lives. And you could still read it as a normal tarot deck, because in the corner here it has the number and the suit. Like for instance, here's Death. But it is specifically for mapping out past lives, and it is a very interesting deck. I would like to play with it a little bit more, but since it has such a specific purpose, I only do it when I have a curiosity about past lives. But if there ever a deck specifically for past lives, this one was definitely done well, for sure. So that is Art History for Past Lives. The next deck is one that I picked up used for very cheap, and this one is just one that honestly is a really easy reader. Kind of one of your typical workhorse decks. This is the Triple Goddess Tarot. I did mod it slightly. I actually wrote the titles on because I didn't like that they weren't there. This is Strength, which is interesting. I wrote the actual title because the creator did change the titles a little bit in the majors and in the courts. So it's a little different. But honestly, it reads pretty easily. It's very... I think it has a lot of similarities to Rider-Waite-Smith. It does follow the whole Maiden Mother Krone thing, so you do have a lot of different ages in here for human figures. This is probably my favorite, one of my favorite Hierophant cards. I love this card so much. But yeah, it is a very, very easy reader, as I will say again. I don't find myself reaching for this deck super often, but there are times where I will reach for some of my decks that are more themed or have a specific purpose, and then there's other times where I will just grab a deck for daily draws that is a little bit more like this. So that's the Triple Goddess Tarot. The next one we have all seen, but I will share it because it is in my collection. I actually own 2 Rider-Waite-Smith decks, but this is the Smith-Waite in a tin, and this is the Rider-Waite-Smith deck that I like the most. I initially was not super interested in getting the Rider-Waite-Smith at all, but my respect for it grew as I started to learn more about tarot, and then I ended up picking up, initially I ended up picking up the Universal Weight, because I was trying to find a deck, a Rider-Waite-Smith deck, that didn't have those just jarring yellows. I mean, they're so abrasive, and I couldn't stand it. And so I got the Universal Weight because it kind of has that softer, like, colored pencil drawing to it. I use that strictly for my study deck. Occasionally they will be displayed out on my altar. But this is the Smith-Waite in a tin, and I actually like the antique kind of wash over the cards. I tend to take this with me in my purse often. This is kind of more like my travel deck. Often, or sometimes I'll do daily draws with this. It just depends. But this is just a... if I'm feeling Rider-Waite-Smith, this is what I reach for to read with. Whereas my Universal Weight, which I won't share in my tarot deck collection, has a specific, like, it's a study deck, it's a display deck, like, that's what it's there for. That's the Smith-Waite in a tin, which I highly recommend for your first deck if you're looking for a tarot deck. Definitely get that one. This next one is just wonderful. It is so beautiful, and I just love this deck. You're going to hear me say this a lot, because honestly, these are all pieces of wonderful artwork, and they are all pieces that really help me on my journey and speak to me. But I wanted this deck for quite some time, and when I finally got it last year, I just loved it. This is the Marigold Tarot. This one has, it's a kind of Marseille so Pip style deck, but the figures in it are skeletal. And I like that because it leaves a lot to the imagination. I'm doing this wrong again, guys. I'm sorry. I mean, specifically for genderless, which is interesting. For instance, like the lovers there. But it's just so beautiful. Yet at the same time, it's just got a darkness to it. I was kind of interested in the antique anatomy, but there's a little bit about the antique anatomy that just actually kind of like the mixture of skeletal and tissue kind of weirds me out a little bit. But this one was just beautiful, but had that kind of darkness to it that I loved. And it's just, I don't know, it's so beautiful. I really enjoy this deck quite a bit. So that is the Marigold Tarot. If I can grab it, not knock over the camera. Next we have a deck that speaks to my heart and soul on so many levels, being a moon baby. This is the Moonchild Tarot. The first 3 cards here you will see are extra cards in the deck. I highly recommend reading the guidebook in this. Danielle Noel, I'm a really big fan of her artwork. I have most of her decks. I have 2 of her oracles, and I have 2 of her tarot. Her artwork is immersive, it's beautiful, it just takes you into this whole other world, and the Moonchild Tarot specifically, this is my favorite deck of the ones that I own of hers. I cannot get enough of this deck, and the guidebook is so amazing. She offers so much in there for really kind of sinking into this deck and its purpose, why it was made. I really love this deck. Usually if someone asks me what is one of my favorite decks, this one probably will pop up in my head really quickly. I love that 2 of Swords. But yeah, I cannot get enough of this deck. I really can't. I like the fact that there's a shadow work card in here too. I think it's beautiful. So there's the Moonchild Tarot. The next one is a cute little deck that is just wonderful, and it has so much to offer. This is the Tarot of the Trees. This is a little deck that you can get off of Etsy for only $25. And I love the artwork. I love the colors. The minors are all themed after the 4 seasons, and each figure you see in here is trees. The incredible part, this is the one extra card that comes in the deck. The incredible part is that the illustrator and author has been able to convey so much emotion through trees. I love the Queen of Wands with her little black cat. And you can really just kind of let your eyes shift around the image and really understand what you are seeing when you look at this. Like, this is one of those ones that I think you could probably not have the titles on it and understand what it is. At least that's how I look at it, but I could be wrong. But I really do love the fact that the 4 seasons are conveyed in here too. It's just a very like nature inspired, wonderful little reader, beautiful deck. I always find myself at such peace when I read with this deck. I just love it. And I am so connected to trees and stuff growing up in Washington State. So this was just something that I really needed in my collection. It does have slight black borders, so I actually just edged it in black. The next one was one that actually was out of my comfort zone a little bit. Just because I tend to prefer a lot of emotion conveyed in my decks, and this deck is very different than that. But It is beautiful. It has a lot to offer. It is very poetic. This is the Ophelia Rosa, and it is a very interesting deck. It only comes with a sheet that has a small poem for each of the cards. So it's just, I don't know, it's a whole nother world for me. But I really, really love it. And it's actually a lot deeper than it looks. It's just one of those decks that leaves you thinking. And I like that. I like something that is sort of out of the box that I tend to put tarot in. And I think that this deck definitely does that for a completely different perspective on what I'm used to seeing. So I found this deck to be, I have to be in a specific mood for it, I will say that, but I really am taken by it. I think it's a wonderful deck. And I don't have any specific purpose for it when I read with it. It's just kind of a, hey, I'm in the mood for this. But I also actually found that this deck I tend to be more gravitating towards for, I want to say, the fall or the spring, the sort of transition periods that we tend to go through. That's one thing that I tend to notice with this deck. But yeah, that is the Ophelia Rosa. I have 3 more decks in this one, and then we will be done. This next one is the Mystical Cat Tarot. Being a kitty person myself, I love kitties. I've been around cats my whole life. I just had to get a kitty deck, and this one was so kindly gifted to me by a really good friend of mine. I love this deck. It is so cute, and it is so fun, and there is just this cute kind of fantasy world with these cats in here that some of the cards just honestly make me giggle. Because especially if you have cats, it's like, okay, yep. Like cat magic, the magician. I love it. I just love it. It's so cute. And then the minors are elemental. So I actually thought that was kind of cool too. So like there's the 9 of Swords. Pretty fitting. Pretty fitting for anxiety. Like just having this, all these things that you fear, all these things that are troubling you. Or the 2 of Cups. How cute is that, you know? I just love this deck. It makes me smile every time I use it. Another one that I just adore. And I can't get enough of. My only gripe about this deck is that the cardstock is really, really thin. So I'm a little afraid I'm going to ruin it sometimes. But it's just so cute. I can't. Like I said, being a cat lover, like this was a need. This was a must-have. I'm so grateful to have been gifted it. The next one is another animal-themed deck, but has a completely different personality, in my opinion, and that is the Krone Tarot. This one, I think, would be really great for anybody who works specifically with the crow as, for, say, an animal guide, or if you have a deity that's specifically associated with the crow. I don't know why that's upside down. But also, I just find crows very mystical animals, and I think that they invoke that kind of magic or mysteriousness of being a practicing pagan or a practicing witch. So that was what kind of drew me to this deck, is just, I think, the mysticalness that these little crovid dudes here provide. But also, this deck is a collage deck that was done really well, and I think that it also is very Rider-Waite-Smith, so it's a pretty easy reader. I recently gave a good friend of mine a reading with this deck, and I walked away from that reading feeling very confident about what I had just given him, and I think that just goes to show how this deck can read and how fantastic it is. So if crows are your thing, and you find yourself drawn to these little guys, I definitely recommend this one, because this deck is it's just really a good reader. And like I said, to me, I look at it and I kind of see that like mystical, mysterious magic side to it as well. I don't know why some of them are upside down. Oh my gosh, that drives me nuts. I have nothing against reversals. I just don't find myself generally reading reversals. Generally. Sometimes I do. Alright, the last deck in this part is one that I recently got as my birthday present this year. This is the Spacious Tarot. I did not back this on Kickstarter because honestly I was a little bit worried, only because, like I said, I tend to really like human figures, or figures that convey a lot of emotion in my decks. But after looking through this deck, I actually found out that, for instance, perfect example, the Devil, there's so much to unpack in these cards. So much. And much like the Tarot of the Trees, this deck also has the seasonal themes throughout, which I actually really, really enjoy. That's something that I tend to really cling to if it's the 4 elements of the 4 seasons. Oh, that star card. It's just beautiful. The moon. It's funny that they're right next to each other. The other thing that really sold me on this deck was the fact that the cups are koi fish. I love koi fish. I have a tattoo of koi fish. Like, I just really enjoyed this. And it was one that, again, I found myself reading for very easily. I found myself just really sinking into the images. And the connection that it has to nature is just awe-inspiring, profound, wonderful, so well done. Just beautiful. The illustrator and the author did a wonderful job working together with this deck. Like, look at this Chariot card, the movement of the river. Like, oh, it's just so much. Or this High Priestess, like, oh, totally worth it, and so wonderful. So that is the Spacious Tarot. And that concludes this second video for my deck collection. I hope you guys enjoyed watching, and I will see you in my next video.